Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Rapid Recap on the Inside Nebraska YouTube page. He's Steve Marik, he's Geoff Exstrom, and I'm Zack Carpenter. We're at Memorial Stadium right now, where about an hour or 2 hours ago we saw the third spring practice of the Huskers spring ball in this offseason. About 40 minutes, first 40 minutes or so of the practice was open to the media, and then we had three players and the two coordinators, Tony White and Marcus Satterfield, spoke at the podiums. The players were Quinton Newsome, Nash, Hutmacher, and Billy Kemp IV. So pretty loaded day of open practice for both sides of the ball and special teams, and then getting a chance to talk with all five of those guys. Steve, just running through the open practice, because I think that was probably the most telling, most interesting part of this entire loaded day. What was your number one, number two biggest takeaways? You had to focus on the defense while I was focused on the offense.
So I focused on the defense, and something that I noticed was Chief Borders. I'm actually going to talk about two of the SEC transfers on the defensive side. Chief Borders, one from Florida coming over. He was first in line in everything that he did, and I thought that was really cool and really telling. And it made a lot of sense because Chief Borders was also the one that Matt Rule chose to come up to the podium earlier in this offseason and kind of talk about the work and leadership that he's been doing. So it was really cool to see Chief Borders as that outside linebacker, edge, whatever we want to call it, be that first in line and be the leader and show that he's here, to do work and be somebody that younger guys can follow. I don't know. I just look at Chief Borders and I see an instant impact transfer. I mean, there's no way that guy is not going to play or have a starting role in Tony White's defense.
We were talking through Slack, and then just after he talked at the podium a few weeks ago, and we were both in agreement. Like, the more that we see him, hear from him, and just think about his potential role in that defense, the more excited we get about him.
Absolutely, and at 6'4", 240 pounds, he's very, very solidly built, and I think he can play right next to Luke Reimer on the inside at the second level. He can roll down to the line of scrimmage as that outside linebacker type body and do some battles with offensive tackles, offensive guards. So the world, is just all open for Chief Borders right now in Tony White's 3-3-5 defense. Second one, I'm going to go with the Georgia transfer, MJ Sherman. He physically looks apart at 6'3", 250 pounds. The guy is big. He's very impressive physically, and he was going through some form tackle drills that Evan Cooper, the defensive backs coach, was running, and he just looks fluid. He looked like he'd been doing it for 4 years, which he has at Georgia. So, it's another transfer that I think is going to be an instant impact guy. In Tony White's defense, somebody that you're going to slide in, I think, as kind of the outside linebacker edge role on the line of scrimmage. But, hey, he could play inside linebacker, too, if he wants. I think that guy's that good. So, Chief Borders, MJ Sherman, two guys that I noticed right off the bat.
Geoff, what was your biggest takeaway or two from today's practice?
Yes, I'll stick with Steve here, go with another Georgia transfer, Marik Gilbert's tight end, big, physical, imposing body, 6'6", and today Marcus Satterfield, offensive coordinator, listed or said that Gilbert was at 270 pounds. He's a borderline offensive tackle at this point, so they're probably going to want to slow him down a little bit, but just a physical guy who really stood out today, but not really on the offensive side, more on the punt block. Well, not punt block, but just regular punt unit. He was in the middle of that shield, that punt shield. He was calling out coverages, just commanding the punt unit, and he was working with a bunch of guys, but he was kind of the one consistent guy right in the middle. So I think you're going to see a lot of him in that punt unit, and of course tight end as well. My second one I have is, of course, I can't mention without going to quarterbacks. And all of them, obviously Casey Thompson, Logan Smothers are out right now. But first look at Jeff Sims. Again, just like Marik Gilbert, physical body, all of that. Was he listed 6'4"?
6'4", 220.
Yeah, so he's all of that. But to be honest, he was a little smaller compared to Richard Torres, his teammate. That's one who really caught my eye, guys. He was huge. He is so tall. But Jeff Sims looks really athletic, moved around a lot. Didn't really do too much when we were able to view the practice, but he looks the part.
It was good to actually just see Jeff Sims out there in pads running around. We got a chance to look at just he's such an athlete. There's nothing that guy can't do on football field athletically. He can do everything. He's got a huge arm. He's really, really fast. He's just like built to be an athlete at 6'4", 220. So it's just going to be really interesting how that quarterback competition goes this spring with Casey Thompson obviously not doing a whole lot, Logan Smothers not doing a whole lot, and then, Heinrich Harburg in there. Chubba Purdy was there today. Richard Torres, which Geoff mentioned at 6'5", 230 pounds. I think he's listed at just a big, strong kid, a huge arm from Texas. So, yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Sims, the quarterback group, with my focus on the offense, that was the number one thing I was looking for. And, I mean, just to double down on what you guys said, yeah, it was impressive to see the type of athleticism he has and the way he's built, the way he moves. They were doing play-action rollout drills. They were first doing play-action drills of short handoffs and then stretch plays before rolling out. Didn't get to see them throw much or at all, which, yeah, exactly, by design. But we saw them a little bit. And, I mean, just to run through, Sims, as expected, was number 1 through the line, followed by Richard Torres, number 2, Chubba Purdy, number 3, Heinrich Harburg, number 4, and the Ole Miss walk-on Jack Wope. How do you say his last name?
I'm not going to butcher
Put you on the spot. So the Ole Miss transfer walk-on was 5th through the line. So that was the order of the signal callers. But also Sims and the rest of the quarterbacks, they were put through ball-carrying drills where they were running through the line. I'm sure that's standard, but just something extra that stood out because I think the quarterback run game could be a little more of an implementation in this offense. And Sims got some praise for his physicality and the way he was performing during that drill. And then just to run through the rest of the position groups, the offensive line obviously is a big spotlight point for obvious reasons. Most noticeable was that Teddy Prohaska was out there. Thought that he might be completely out for spring. Looks like might be upgraded
in a green jersey.
Yeah, he was in a green jersey. He was limited. He was going through individual drills though, which is good to see. I wouldn't say he was going through them gingerly at all. He was being very careful and they're being cautious with him. But good to see him getting some work in after 2 straight season-ending injuries and then going through surgery in the fall. And got a little peek behind the curtain to Donovan Raiola. He's publicly very, very reserved, but I think we all know that he has this coaching style, this teaching style that his offensive linemen in his room really take to. And we got a little snippet of intensity out of it. He was hollering, if you don't care about your teammate, either you care about your teammates or you don't. He was yelling that. I'm not sure who it was to, but he was getting his message across. Across the line, left to right, it was Bryce Benhart at left tackle. Going through the top group when they were doing their individual periods, team period of the 5 guys all lined up, it was Bryce Benhart at left tackle, Nwili, I can never remember how to say his first name.
Norden
Nwili, left guard. Ben Scott, center. Right guard was, help me out, Steve, it was number 57, Ethan Piper, and then Turner Corcoran at right tackle. So across the board, I don't think there's much of a surprise there.
Got kind of a switch then on the tackles with Turner Corcoran, who started his career at left tackle, played a lot of left tackle, moving to the right now, and Bryce Benhart spent a lot of his entire career at right tackle on the right side, flipping to the left end. So
yeah, so a little bit of a switch up, but still I think for the most part, I don't know if there were many surprises there, but Benhart, something we had heard was that he had trimmed down a little bit, and yet he's listed at 6'9", 315 pounds, but looking noticeably trimmer. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, you see Bryce walking around, and physically I think he doesn't look like he did last year. We obviously don't have scales to weigh these guys right now, so we're just going off of looks, but he physically looks thinner, so yeah.
Yeah, so as the quarterbacks in the offensive line, the 2 most noticeable groups, but then I also got a chance to watch E.J. Barthel and Garrett McGuire take their position groups, the running backs and receivers, through their individual periods. And not to run through everything because we wrote about it at nebraska.rivals.com, about some of the teachable moments from E.J. Barthel. It's just a slice of intensity that we saw from him, getting on A.J. Allen a little bit. Gabe Ervin Jr. continues to be another guy that they're very impressed with. And then the receivers, Xavier Betts looks like a monster physically. And it was actually Billy Kemp and Xavier Betts, who were the top 2, number 1 and number 2, Kemp number 1, Betts number 2, going through punt returning drills with a couple of the other guys, which Kemp is not a surprise. He was Virginia's top punt returner for the 4 seasons, 5 5 years he was at Virginia, but he looked a little more comfortable than Betts right now, which again is not a surprise, but just another noticeable item. And Malachi Coleman, the Huskers' highest ranked signee of the 2023 class, he showed up and he was watching not just the receivers and his future position coach and position room, but also had a keen eye on the punt returning drills that were going on. So that was an extra thing of note for me. But eventually transitioned to Tony White, Marcus Satterfield, and the three players I said before that were speaking at the podium down here. Steve, what was the thing that stood out the most from their time at the podium?
Yeah, so one thing that I found interesting with Marcus Satterfield is he said that he's never been at a place this big before, and by that he meant his roster, and he talked a lot about the tight end bodies. He's got a lot of tight ends right now that he's really interested in, and he said he wants to be in 13 personnel a lot, which is one running back and 3 tight ends. So, maybe keep that in mind when we're talking about, what the fall is going to look like and what kind of personnel packages Nebraska is going to have out there.
And real quick on that, I think we're noticing that in recruiting. They have 3 tight ends coming in for a monster recruiting weekend. So.
A lot of tight ends on the roster, a lot of tight ends on the recruiting land. So he also talked about Billy Kemp. I asked him about Billy Kemp, and I'll be writing kind of more of an in-depth feature on that, about how tough that kid is, about how versatile he is lining up in the slot or out wide in the backfield a little bit. He played it at Virginia, so that's another kind of chess piece. This coaching staff likes using the term chess piece, but Billy Kemp is another one.
Ton of toughness out of a short guy. I mean, what else is new? I'd like to hear that.
For sure. And another thing we can end on Marcus Satterfield was, he was asked about what he wants from the quarterback position, and he said this in the past, and he just didn't stray away from it. He wants them to take care of the football. If you don't take care of the football, you're not going to play quarterback here. So, decision making, I think, is going to be one of Marcus Satterfield's top traits that he looks for in quarterbacks. And then
and I think on that, another reason that they're going through those drills of having the assistant coach slam them with the pads as they're running through and holding onto the ball.
Holding onto the damn ball.
Yeah.
So which we heard a lot in the open practice portion. And then switching over to Tony White, I didn't get to listen to a ton of it, but he also said that these kids are really willing to adapt to the change. They're very coachable, which is a good thing to hear. He gave a lot of praise. One name that popped up a lot with Tony White was Malcolm Hartzog, the true freshman starter at corner last year. Tony White really likes him. He said he's very versatile, and who knows, we might be seeing Malcolm Hartzog as kind of a safety role as well. Tony White mentioned that, but there's a lot of off-season practices to go. But corner, safety, who knows? Maybe even a smaller version of the rover. I don't know, but it's really fun to think about. He also gave a shout out to walk-on John Bullock, which is kind of cool. I think John Bullock has been a mainstay on the special teams front the past couple of seasons at Nebraska. Just a really good kid, good football player in general, and I think he's catching the eye of Tony White. Also, with the rover position, we're going to have more on that at Inside Nebraska later, but he mentioned Isaac Gifford and Miles Farmer as 2 guys who maybe have a strong potential to maybe play that role. And what that role actually is, I don't think is determined yet, but for now, I think Tony White was really kind of impressed with Isaac Gifford and Miles Farmer. Also, Omar Brown. So just another nickel that is going to be doing good things. We talked to Quinton Newsome, and he said Omar Brown is really impressing him as somebody who's taking a step and taking charge of the opportunity that's in front of him. So Omar Brown's another name to kind of keep in the back of your mind.
Geoff, what was, I guess, number one takeaway or thing that stood out from those press conferences?
Yeah, so I paid mostly attention to Nash Hutmacher, and it's a big year for him. He's going to be one of those guys that's going to be relied upon right in the middle, especially with the 3.35. And he talked a lot about his weight, and I found that interesting. He said at the end of last year he was in that 320, 325 mark, and that the biggest emphasis he's had this year is losing that weight and becoming more athletic, because I think that's what Tony White wants in his nose tackle there in the middle at 335 is someone who's big, around that 300-pound mark, but also pretty athletic, and that's what they're trying to do, shed a lot of that body fat. And he didn't mention a specific weight that he wanted to get down to, but I'm going to guess that's going to be around that 300 mark for him. So I think he's still around that 320, maybe a little under that, but right now he's worried about losing body fat.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, a lot of takeaways, a lot of observations, not just from the press conferences, but from that 40-minute practice window, which was the first of 4 open practice windows that we're going to get throughout this spring, 14 practices, and then the spring game, which counts as that 15th practice of the spring. So we'll have plenty more observations, things that we're going to be noting as those continue to roll out. But right now at nebraska.rivals.com, we have offensive notes and defensive notes from today's session, and then wrap up of the press conference that we saw, plenty more features and analysis and news items, things that stood out will be coming your way today and throughout the rest of the week. So again, love to encourage you to subscribe to nebraska.rivals.com. Encourage you to like this video, subscribe to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel so you can have those videos dropped directly into your feed. So for Steve Marik, for Geoff Exstrom, I'm Zack Carpenter, and we'll catch you guys again next time.